Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss Rishi Sunak's petulant but also self-defeating attitude when it comes to his irritation at failing to make ground against Labour. He can either respond to voters' concerns and cobble together an election strategy, or he can take the easy path of placating his more rebellious MPs and get crushed in the election. He needs to make his mind up because right now he seems to want the best of both worlds. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So Rishi Sunak seems to be getting increasingly irritated by his failure to make up lost ground against Labour in the polls. The gap between the two parties is way lower than in the last tragic days of the lettuce wars, but still above the level when Boris Johnson stepped aside. This will understandably be upsetting Rishi Sunak for two reasons. First of all, Boris Johnson's allies will keep asking him why. If Sunak was supposed to turn the party's fortunes around, how come the polling is even worse now? Second, there's absolutely no sign of progress being made, even aiming for an election next year. I saw a report which suggested that Sunak thinks Starmer keeps getting away with things. In reality, what he's upset about is that Starmer is listening to the public. Rishi Sunak is insistent on ignoring the public, but the public still voting for him. It's like, no, it's not working that way. The only policy success the Tories have had under Sunak politically that is ULEZ. And that was all based on lies. But a success is a success. Sunak thought he could ride the wave and turn what is a flash in a pan local issue into a national strategy. And indeed, with support from the mainstream media, he's been able to poke at some objections amongst voters. But Starmer's responding. He said that the ULEZ scheme in London is the right one, but it needs rolling out properly with well-funded scrappage schemes. The scrappage scheme, as it happens, has been boosted. But he's also said that he doesn't necessarily support similar schemes in other cities during the cost of living crisis. Essentially, politics works like this. There's this really good policy that will make life better for people. Oh, great. Does it have public support? If the answer is yes, fantastic, go with it. If the answer is no, hold fire and either get the support before we proceed or work out another way to achieve the same aims in a popular or at least voter neutral way. Politics really is as simple and as complicated as that. It's simple because the general principles are easy to understand. It's complicated because actually it is sometimes complex to get the public on board with good policies which will benefit them, but in a way that isn't always easy to see how it will benefit them. But without public support, you don't get to implement any policies, good or bad. Well, not without a military coup anyway, because that's the second way you can achieve executive power, military means. The problem with that is that those with their armies powerful enough to actually take over a country tend not to have people's interests at heart. So it's back to needing public support. And the same could be said of the 2-child cap on benefits policy recently. Removing the cap is the right policy. Investing in children, absolutely essential for a thriving economy. And even the Tories want people to have more children. And it's really this simple. You need children to be fit and healthy so they can grow up to be fit, healthy adults. Removing the cap would be a very cost-effective way of reducing child poverty, boosting their life chances, seeing them grow up to be a good asset for our economy if the economy is all you care about. But it's unpopular. Removing the cap, that is. The cap itself is popular amongst voters, even amongst Labour voters. So Starmer, being on record as saying the cap is a bad policy, says he will nonetheless leave it in place, at least for now. He'll work on ways to reduce child poverty that have public support instead. For example, Labour have plans to massively expand childcare provision. Not the half-arsed approach of Rishi Sunak, who just used it as an excuse to bung one of his wife's business interests some more money, but a way of actually letting parents be able to afford to work. Nothing unpopular about this. Sunak appears to think that these changes in position are getting away with it. Oh, he keeps changing position and getting away with it. It's like, no, Labour are listening to voters and responding accordingly. When Labour change a position, it is because the public have changed their position, or because the position was never really tested and suddenly it is. The question the Tories should be asking is not why Starmer gets away with changing his position in response to the public, but why Sunak is not doing so. I was reading through comments on the channel. One said this was to do with the oil companies, the energy crisis. And they said that Sunak wouldn't tax oil companies because he loves the money. My response to that is, well, he can love losing the election then. Because this is the choice Sunak needed to make. In theory, you could say needs to make now, but I'm getting to a point where I think it's too late for him to change now. Like, I would predict that Sunak is very likely to keep changing his strategy from one obvious failure to another one, because he doesn't understand that basic rule of politics. You need the voters on your side. Specifically the target swing voters. The choice Sunak had was to respond to the concerns of voters or spend the remainder of this parliament filling his pockets with ill-gotten gains from self-serving economic decisions. He thought he could do both. Perhaps he could if he wasn't facing an opponent which is earning public credibility. But then if Labour weren't presenting the Tories with a strong challenge, they never would have made Sunak their leader. You know, this only occurred because Boris Johnson was going to lose the election. It was Sunak's job to put the party in an election winning position against a strong challenge. That absolutely necessitated responding to voters' concerns. But he chose not to. He chose to try to swindle them by pursuing spurious metrics and then failed to even meet those questionable targets. He is a Prime Minister who has never experienced financial hardship, trying to appeal to an electorate where there are millions of households facing financial hardships right now, in some cases for the first time, and they don't know how to deal with it. They need help, not a multimillionaire telling them to hold their nerve. The thing about changing your position is it can be a problem in politics. It can be absolutely ruinous in politics, but the public don't mind if you're changing it to be on their side. What the public hate is when you promise something they want and then don't deliver it. They change your mind. For example, saying you're going to build 40 new hospitals, then not building 40 new hospitals. The 40 new hospitals was never an unpopular policy. What was unpopular is not doing it, failing to deliver it. That is the sort of change of position you don't get away with. And I often feel that Rishi Sunak is so bad at politics that you could give him lessons at a level that a 10-year-old could cope with. It's like he lacks the sophistication to understand that a change of position can be either good or bad, and he can't understand why which is which. A month on from the by-elections, which properly considered were a disaster for the Tories, but Sunak somehow managed to make losing 2 safe seats look like a win. And the Tories are actually further behind Labour in the polls than they were then. Sunak thinks that his strategy now needs to be fighting dirty. I would argue that this is a magnificently bad idea for 2 reasons. First, if you're not addressing people's concerns during a crisis, it would be different if things were sort of going all right. Yes, you can, culture wars. Yes, okay, that can work. Populism can work. But when there's a real crisis, you are just pissing them off more and more. Populism during a crisis only really works when you are the opposition. Banging on about things that voters don't care about when you are in government and you can help their problems and you're not doing. When these voters are heading into another winter of choosing between heating and eating, that is not the route to closing the gap in the polls. But secondly, Sunak just doesn't have the personality to make this work. A nasty character with a really acerbic personality may pull it off. I don't think it will endear them to the public, but I just think Sunak will make a complete hash of it. He's too mild-mannered to make it credible. There are ways in which any politician or public performer of any kind can, of course, develop skills, improve their patter, but you can't be something you're not. Like an actor can, but actors need only stay in character for the length of their performance. A politician needs to do it for their entire career. If the character you're trying to play is too much of a departure from your own personality, it just doesn't work. Can you imagine Sunak trying to play the political equivalent of a dirty street fighter?
Really bad.
Really bad?
Very rude.
It's as rude as you like.
There's ladies present.
I'm sure they won't object this once. Now, come along.
Right. devil.
Just won't work, will it? You know, Rishi Sunak is seen as a technocrat. Now, the thing about technocrats is they're supposed to just make things work. You know, you accept that they're not really politicians. They don't have the personality for populism. They're not rabble-rousers. All they have is administrative competence. That's it. That's their thing. And sometimes a country's in such a bad hole that people just go, that's what we want. Never mind the bells and whistles. Never mind the fireworks. We just want competent. Sunak had the choice to go with that, to be the quiet, calm leader who just made things better after the heady days of Johnson and Truss. But he was too weak, too timid. You know, how is this field mouse, who was too spineless to stand up against the wreckers on his own side, supposed to take on his real political opponents? He's going to try and intimidate the prosecutor who went up against some of the country's most dangerous criminals, is he? Do me a favour. I have a feeling that come the end of the year, Sunak will be talking about needing another reset and another new strategy. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.